Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
I've been going out with a girl, her name is Julie, but last night she said to me when we were watching telly.
Janet has called from Denham. Hello, Janet.
Hello, Sheila. Thank you so much for taking my call. I just feel passionately about this, Sheila. I love this country. I'm quite old now, and I see how we worked out of it in the war, all those young men that gave their lives, and we worked and worked and worked. I feel that Europe isn't for us. Europe's working against us. It saddens me the way everybody goes on about Nigel Farage. I'm not a total fan, Sheila, but he's worked with Europe for 30 years. He is not a racist. What he is saying is this country, and we can certainly see it round here, we needed to just tame it down a little bit till we've got some of the infrastructure in place.
When you
David
say...
Cameron apparently went over and asked, because your caller said earlier, I hope he did ask, but he went with a loaf of bread and he didn't even come back with any crumbs. Theresa May has picked up a poisoned chalice. It's all right, all of us having a go, but whatever she presents, she's pushed down. And quite honestly, I didn't see any of the men fighting for her position, Sheila. If the referendum was going to be that bad, why was it presented to the people in Great Britain? And also, I just feel that we're all taken as idiots. Lord Heseltine is, more or less, we didn't know what we were voting for. Yes, I do. I see it in hospitals, Sheila. They are absolutely filled to the gills. They're talking about...
But that's got nothing to do with the European Union.
Yeah, but it's to do with the amount of people, and I'm not racist. Some of my best friends, I love them to bits.
It isn't all to do with the amount of people, Janet. It's to do with how much we spend on the NHS. It's to do with an ageing population. In some areas, yes, it is to do with a growing population. But it isn't just, you cannot say that the problems in the NHS are just about immigrants. Not least, hang on, let me finish. Not least, because a lot of the solutions in the NHS are about immigrants, i.e. the people who work in it.
Yeah, I do realise that, Sheila. I absolutely... But you're here, the lovely people... Sheila, I'd want to come to Britain. Of course I would. And we'll open the doors even more. But we need to get the house building up. There's going to be a shortage in our secondary schools. They're saying it is the worst since the real immigration boom came. It is the worst. It was in the paper yesterday.
Well, there are
Sheila.
vacancies in all kinds of key worker profiles, I'm afraid, Janet, which is why it's so concerning that we are starting to feel like a country that some immigrants who we would want to come here are deciding not to in numbers. And even with immigration to one side, those vacancies that are remaining unfilled in some of those absolutely vital jobs. And they're not just high-end jobs. That's a problem for all of us. It's a problem for the productivity of the UK, and it's a product for those services that can't provide for the people who want to use them. Janet, thank you very much indeed for your call. Anthony in Strawberry Hill, hello.
Hello, Sheila.
Hello, what did you want to say, Anthony?
Honesty, I think, a little bit of honesty in life would be a thing. Mr. Heseltine, I distrust him in his previous roles. He managed to buy a little island that was worth £10. And it's worth 200 billion now because it has minerals, and he bought it off the local government. Is he the honest man to help us?
Which island are we talking about?
He owns a little island. There was minerals on it, very low-grade minerals, and as soon as he bought it 6 months later, he was a trillionaire.
Was he? I don't know whether what you're saying is true, but even if it is there anything necessarily wrong with that?
Pardon?
Is there something wrong with that if it's true? I don't know the detail of it, of what you talk. But
he stole money from us, the people, of our country, and we're passed by that. But that was just a highlight of of the people.
Well, please do, because I'm not sure you can substantiate it.
Right, well, it's a fact. It's a fact. We can move away from that, but the honesty of Parliament, they are, headless chickens, and they're not helping us as people. They're only looking after themselves.
So what do you want? What do you want from them?
I want honesty. I want someone to stand up and say, the people have spoken, and we want to go through whatever we wished in our vote and stick to it, and don't deviate in any shape or form.
Even if, and you might not agree with this, but even if your parliamentarians come back with a vote that says, look, in all honesty, we can't do this because it's bad for us. It's bad for our country. That's our judgment. What then?
They're not honestly and truly listening to us as people.
No, they can. No, they might be listening, and they might come back to you and say, we've listened, and hang on, Auntie, I'm giving you a scenario that you can work with. They can listen and then come back and say to you, we think this will be damaging to the nation, and you say, do it anyway, do you?
So I feel I'm a follower of the people in the sense.
What does that mean? There's all kinds of people. I wouldn't follow half of them.
Oh, Sheila. I think we can go beyond half, please.
Well, no, what I'm saying is, what do you mean when you say I'm a follower of the people? A more ludicrous statement I've never heard.
I'm a believer of the good in the world, okay, not the bad.
Well, now you sound like a hippie.
Huh?
Now you sound like a hippie. What the heck does that mean? Nothing.
Well, I'm beyond that age, but I'm glad you complimented me on that. But I'm a free spirit, and I may be over the age of retirement, but I'm sort of like believing, we spoke, and I want people to listen to what we spoke. I mean, I want to act on what we spoke and what we voted.
Even if it's damaging.
But who is it damaging to? Only to certain people in Parliament. It's not to the people.
How can you prove that?
Well, open your eyes and you'll see when you go. Everybody's talking in London. Everybody talks about in London.
No, we don't.
What about?
We don't.
Oh, you're going to use it. Well, what about? Have you ever heard many people from Wales?
Yeah.
Have you?
Yeah. Well, Anthony, you're onto a sticky wicket here. I go around the country a lot in my life, in my work. I'm not fixated on London in any way, shape or form. So.
But we think we all are. We're fixated on London, and there's plenty of other people around the country who demonstrated this stuff.
I think you'll find that quite a lot of Labour MPs are looking at the Leave voting areas of the north, northwest, northeast of England and fixating on their constituencies very much outside of London when it comes to this question.
I think you should transfer your show around the country and ask individuals yourself and stop being in London. But go a little bit travelling and open as we're going to be very hot in the next few months. Pop around the country
But do you listen to the programme? On the list of people in front of me now, we've got Nick in Tyneside, we've got Brian in Croydon, we've got Mary calling from the Costa del Sol, we've got Angela in Stratford, we've got Tony in Windsor, we've got New Malden, you name it. We have people calling from Florida, we have people calling from China.
Okay. I've been stand corrected, but I feel you should go further into the country, into the little villages, and see what they've done.
Well, actually, strangely enough, I'm in Birkenhead next week doing a programme about austerity in Frank Field's constituency. So there you go.
I take it back, and I apologise.
You're preaching to the converted. Thank you, Anthony. Anthony in Strawberry Hill, follower of the people.
Are you committed, Andrew, to ensuring that Northern Ireland is not treated differently to the rest of the UK?
I am, yes.
But the Conservative government already accepts that Northern Ireland is different. Because after Brexit, no matter what happens, people in Northern Ireland, unlike the rest of the UK, will still have the right to be EU citizens. That's your position. You put that in your own Brexit position paper on Ireland.
Well, that's the common travel area as well, isn't it? We do have the right to go over to Ireland, don't we? As an English person, I have the right to go to Ireland. I believe I can ask for a passport, can't I?
It's nothing to do...
Well, the Irish people...
Hold on a moment. It is nothing to do with your right as an English person to come over to Ireland. Nothing to do with it.
Well, I'm sure that currently...
It's nothing to do with that.
We have a reciprocal agreement where I can go to Ireland and ask for an Irish passport, and someone from Ireland can come to the UK and ask for a British passport. We have that system. That's the system we have, isn't it?
Sorry, hold on. You think there is a reciprocal agreement where you as an English person can come over and get an Irish passport?
I can apply for Irish citizenship, yes.
I hear from Charlie in Dorking. You're a businessman, Charlie. Does this extra transition time sound good to you or not?
Sheila, look, no one knows. Look, nobody really knows what's going to happen. No one does. But let me say something. If we did stay in the EU, first off, I'm a leaver, okay?
Right.
I voted leave. I still stand by my...
Your vote.
By my decision, by my democratic decision to leave, which over half of the country have voted, and we've still got this. Look, there are people there's people like your colleague James that you could pull his fingernails off. He'd still say no, we should stay in the EU, and he's dead set. But there's other people, I mean, there's a little contingent of MPs that I think are jumping on the bandwagon, hoping that they destabilise the progress and hoping for a general election. But look, let's go back to let's think sense here. Let's go back to the real reasons that we voted out. I voted out, and I'm not a racist at all whatsoever, and I'll get a little bit. I'll get angry when people say, "Oh, you're a racist."
Well, tell me why you voted out, and then
No.
people
I voted out. A lot of it is because of immigration, but it's not because I'm racist. It's because of the strain on our public services and our schools and our NHS. All them are going to collapse if we keep getting the droves of people coming in. Come on.
You don't think that a halving of local authority funding in some cases has contributed to the collapse of public services? No.
No,
just immigration.
Come on, look, listen, it's been halved, because if we didn't halve it, the country would end up like Greece.
Yes, but you accept that will have an impact on public services, I presume, Charlie, because you've got a brain in your head, and it can't possibly just be, and isn't just immigration, because there are so many pressures on public services. It seems odd to focus just on migrants who use them. Seems to me. So maybe take a look at that "I'm not a racist" thing.
Mike wants to speak to us from where? Go for it, Mike.
Yeah, I think everybody's on the wrong tack, or most people are on the wrong tack about what Theresa May should do. Everybody's crying out for certainty. So if Theresa May were to tell the country, and tell the EU, more importantly, that she was going to leave the EU in March of next year and will trade on WTO terms, that would give certainty to everybody. People are saying it would be crashing out. It wouldn't be crashing out. It would be doing the one thing that she could do that would unite everybody in this country, because it's positive. Now, if people think that the EU would really want to lose all the trade that they do with us...
Positive to go to leave on a no-deal basis, you think that's going to unite the country?
Yes, I do.
Is there any polling that would support your theory, or any suggestion?
Listen,
have you gauged public opinion on this, or where are you getting that view from?
I've gauged public opinion because I've listened to LBC and I've watched the news for 2.5 years. Mm-hmm. And Theresa May, the ploy that she's been using is always...
But Mike, if you can't even unite me behind you on that suggestion, how do you think you're going to unite the nation behind it?
You know media are biased.
But hold on, Mike, but you're not.
No, I'm not biased. I voted to leave.
Right, I voted to leave. No, you're not biased in your interpretation that the whole country will unite behind a no-deal option.
That's right, because people say it's crashing out.
Where on earth are you getting that from, Mike? Why should I believe Mike from where? What is the basis for that assumption?
Because I'm not being paid to say leave. I'm not being paid to say
but
remain.
It's still only your opinion, Mike. You cannot argue with any credibility that the whole country is the one thing that can unite the country is to leave on a no deal. That's just... I don't know where you plucked that from, Mike. I mean, did you dream it up last night? I mean, where did you get that view from?
Well, are we not asking the Prime Minister? The country's asking the Prime Minister for certainty. Do you agree on that?
Well, yes, but No,
Right,
leadership.
okay.
They're asking her for
Right.
leadership.
No. Leadership is about decisive statements and moves.
Yeah, but you see, I could flip that, Mike. I could say that if Theresa May suddenly said, right, we're going to stay in the EU, that would unite the country because it's leadership. I can use your own logic in that way.
No, because what that would do, that would really light a powder keg. You were trying to lure the other guy that was on earlier into a gunpowder. And it's absolutely ridiculous.
Right. So when you say light a powder keg, what does that mean?
Well, what it means is
are you threatening the country with violence?
No. Look, I want to get back to the main
Mike,
point.
I want to get to this point. Are you threatening the country with violence if we stay in the EU?
You're deflecting away from the argument.
Mike, answer that question, please. Are you threatening the country with violence if we don't end up Brexiting?
No, I'm not.
Then what do you mean by powder keg?
You're threatening the country with violence by asking for another referendum.
What? Oh, so if we have another referendum, there will be violence coming from the Brexit side.
No. What I'm asking you for is we've had a referendum and the majority voted to leave. Full stop.
Yep.
If Theresa May says that we are leaving and we'll trade on WTO terms, it would be in the EU's court then for them to come back and tell us what they're going to do. Okay, all this crashing out is absolutely ridiculous.
You've made a wild assumption, a wild claim that the country would unite behind a no-deal Brexit. You've plucked it out of thin air, and then you've said if we go to a people's vote, it will be like lighting a powder keg, and you refuse to elaborate on what that means. And one suspects because you're scared to actually follow through with the consequences of your logic, because you'd get into trouble with the law. But Mike, you can't just make wild claims like a no-deal Brexit will unite the nation with no evidence apart from Mike's opinion in Ware. Why should I believe Mike in Ware that that's going to unite the country? Gary wants to speak to us from Edgware.
Yeah, hi. You're very provocative today, Maajid. I reckon you must have got out of the wrong side of bed.
Well, I reckon Mike got out the wrong side of the bed, Gary.
I'll show you my colours. I'm a Remainer.
Yeah.
I think it's a massive mistake. I think we're a country of political ignoramuses in the large, and we were completely conned by both sides in the lead up to the vote. However, very importantly, the vote was to leave, and the people that I have spoken to that voted leave wanted to get out completely, cut all ties.
So hold on. So you're not a Remainer then?
I said I'm a Remainer.
Well, but you want to leave. But you want to leave.
I said the people that I've listened to me properly, Maajid. There's people that I've spoken to who voted leave want to get out completely.
Okay.
So I haven't done a poll of all 17 million people.
Yeah.
I make that point, but the people I've spoken to all wanted to leave completely for various reasons, but often the same reasons: immigration, being controlled by Europe.
But Gary, we know that. What's the point you're making?
The point I'm making, Maajid, is we cannot have another referendum because we've had a vote. There have been 11 different votes in Europe over the last 40 years that are related to people.
So you want to leave, right? Gary, do you want to leave?
Maajid, I am a Remainer.
No, but do you want to leave now?
I believe we need to honour the 17 million people.
Right, in other words, you want to leave, Gary?
The majority that voted. Yes, Maajid. If you're saying
what's so hard about answering that? Just accept that you want to leave. I mean, that's what you're setting this up for.
I accept that I want to honour that vote that took place, yes.
Yeah, to leave, right. Thank you. Now, the reason I was pressing you on an answer for that question, because it's not so relevant to start the conversation as I am a Remainer, but I now think we should honour the vote to leave, which actually kind of means you're a leaver now, right? Wait, Gary, hold on. So why you're so scared of a second vote, may I add, is because you fear you will lose it.
No, Maajid, I'm not scared of a second vote because of that. I am annoyed that we would have a second vote because the first vote didn't work out the way certain people wanted it.
That's because that's what happens in life, Gary. People don't get what they want.
No, Maajid, that's not what happens in life.
Of course it's what happens in life. Do you get... so if you're hungry, do you just click your fingers and food arrives on your table without you having to work hard for it?
let me make my point, Maajid. There have been 11 previous votes regarding different countries remaining or leaving the EU. Every single one of those votes was rerun when it went.
Gary, you know what, mate? You know what? It was a nice try to begin this conversation by "I'm a Remainer," but obviously you're not, and I don't see any reason for why you needed to try and deceive everyone with that opening line. Clearly, you've done your research as to why you're a Leaver. You've got all the Leave arguments to claim I'm a Remainer. Look, we're not that silly, Gary. We kind of do this for a living, and we hear people like you all the time. But thanks for calling in anyway. June from Lowestoft.
Oh, good morning, Maajid. Hi there. I'd just like to say the deal. In 2016, David Cameron discussed and tried to deal with the EU, and the EU said no.
I know.
The referendum the referendum is the EU said no. So the referendum we said we would leave without a deal.
Well, June,
nobody discussed the deal. That was the referendum was about.
You're not going to get, but Theresa May's not going to give you a no deal. You're trying to, you and Gary and everyone has been calling for the last 5 minutes, trying to fight with me on this no deal business. I'm not. Hold on, but June, hold on. Listen to me. I'm not the Prime Minister. I'm not the one stopping you getting a no deal. It's the PM.
The question initially was about what she should do. And do you know what she should do? She shouldn't listen to you or me or Gary or Mike or Tom or Dick or Harry. She should listen to her conscience.
Well, she is. That's why she's come back with Chequers. But do you like Chequers, June?
If she was listening to her conscience, she would leave. She would resign and go and find herself a nice job somewhere else.
But June, okay, right. So that's not going to happen. So the question now is practically, because obviously as you and I are grown adults, we don't always get what we want. You, I imagine, wanted to leave, and I know I wanted to stay. Now, at the end of the day, neither of us, June, got what we wanted. The Prime Minister isn't doing what we wanted. And so my real question to you is, considering she's not doing what you want, June, don't you want another say over it?
Not at all.
All right, thank you very much. That's June there from Lowestoft.
Do that. Steve in Dartford. Steve, coming back to these gangs. What do you want to tell me? Good morning.
Oh, hi, Nick. Yeah, thanks for taking my call. I think I was listening earlier, and obviously people were sort of saying Asian and about these rape gangs, and then they were saying Pakistani. But I think the underlying thing is the religious aspect here in terms of them being Muslim, because they certainly weren't Hindu Pakistanis or Sikh Pakistanis, and it is unfortunate in terms of the literal teachings of the Quran, mean that anybody who isn't a Muslim is counted as being sort of worthless.
Yeah, but these people aren't Muslims. They're more Muslims than I'm a Buddhist. Let's be honest about it. These are just criminals. These are just criminals. These are just sexual deviants. I think that's you have to remember that Japan has effectively banned Muslims, and China's doing the same. Hang on, Japan has banned Muslims. I don't think Japan has banned. Well, we need to check that. You can't know. Oh dear. Why would you? You can't ban someone just as a product of their faith, Steve.
Well, you can if their faith is actually incompatible with a liberal democracy, really.
You please tell me you agree that most Muslims in this country are just fine. They just want to have raise their kids and have a couple of weeks holiday a year and be able to pay the gas bill. That's all they want to do. Do you agree?
That's true. That's true because basically they treat their faith in a similar way that I'm not a fundamental Christian.
We've just checked. Japan isn't trying to ban all Muslims, Steve. Did you get that on the net?
Well, I think you'll find that there certainly aren't any mosques in Japan.
Let's just get on. There's certainly no traffic wardens. You never see a Chinese traffic warden, I'll give you that one. But I don't know how many bicycles are there in Beijing? Steve, we'll probably park that one there, but I'm grateful for your input. Let's just get that on the record. Japan is not seeking to ban Muslims. Can we just come back to Maajid Javid, the Home Secretary who, credit to him, he's a smart man. He'll have known when he put his head above the parapet by sending out that tweet. He'll have known that it was going to get a bit bouncy for him. Is he right so to have done? David, coming to you as a caller in a moment. This is an interesting one from Nigel, who says, I went to the first day of this trial regarding the Huddersfield groomers, my goodness, because I wanted to protest against these people. Let me tell you, some of their families were just as bad. They were laughing and joking and taking pictures of us and saying our children would be next. And these were the older men and women, not just the young ones. Dear, oh dear, that's horrific if that's true. Philip in Sandbach. Good morning, Philip. You're on the radio in Cheshire.
Hello, yes.
Hello, sir. Yes, indeed, yes.
I happen to be an East African Asian and an ethnic Goan, and I have to agree with the Home Secretary that we have a problem with Asian men.
Right.
Asian men are grooming white girls.
But not all Asian men. Can we put the word some in, do we think there, please?
Oh, some, okay. But the problem here is generally Asian families raise their sons to treat white girls less respectfully.
How do you know that, sir?
Well, culturally, I know this from my experience of Asian families generally.
Right.
The impression given is that these families raise their sons to treat white girls less respectfully.
Was that the case with you, then?
Not necessarily, because my family tended to be Catholic.
Right.
And so my family's views tended to be a bit more westernized. But if you look at the more conservative Asian communities, the Hindus and the Muslims and the Sikhs and so on, they take a more traditional view of the role of women and girls. And so the implication here is that their boys are raised to treat white girls less respectfully. And that leads to Asian men raping white girls and Asian men grooming white girls.
Some Asian.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's quite reasonable to put a racial slur to this particular aspect of crime.
Yes.
And I think the Home Secretary's been very reasonable. David Lammy is wrong. He tries to brush the issue of race under the carpet. We must accept that there are certain cultural norms, which means that blacks and Asians are more likely to commit certain types of crimes.
Well, yeah, some. We need to keep saying the word some, because otherwise it's breathtaking in its spread and it's wholly unfair. So we have that in some instances, poorly educated or whatever. Philip, thank you.
Steve in Northampton, hello.
Hello, Sheila. How you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, yeah.
Yeah, I've a slightly different take on this. If you were a Trump supporter, how would you think that blowing up Democrats is going to help his cause in the midterms with them just a couple of weeks away? Do you think that's going to assist him or hurt him really badly? I think this is, a little bit of a conspiracy theorist myself, but I have to say, this smells really bad.
Of what? Of what?
Of some sort of another attempt to make the Republican Party and Donald Trump look a lot worse than they actually are. I mean, he's a pretty, poor character. There's no debate in that. But as a politician, he's kicking butt at the minute. He's delivering on his manifestos. He's
some of them
over there. Some of them, most of them, as many as he can. As many as the Democrats allow him to.
Not the wall, not healthcare. Not returning those children to their parents. Quite a few nots
to be
here.
fair, that was reported rather badly as well. That had been done on a much larger scale under Obama.
Not true.
We seem to forget that.
No, not true.
Oh, well, okay. All right. I read it on several sources, and it seemed like they've been doing it for quite a while. But really, if you look at who benefits from this horrible campaign of sending explosives, it's not Donald Trump or anyone who supports.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you've heard me or anyone else this hour suggest that Donald Trump. I mean, my take on all of this in America at the moment is who the heck knows. But you haven't heard me say anything to the effect that Donald Trump orchestrated this.
Someone, a Republican sympathiser, has attacked or attempted to attack Democratic candidates or supporters of Democrats. That's been said a few times since I've been on the air here. I've been listening on hold.
No.
A couple of people have said that.
No, they haven't. Nobody. We have no idea who.
They have.
No, they have. No.
A couple of your commenters suggested that was the case, didn't they?
Not to my recollection, Steve. What I'm hearing, okay, well, I'll accept I'm wrong if I'm wrong, I'll listen back, but my understanding of what I've been hearing for the last 45 minutes is we are looking at Trump's delivery of his message and what it might foster in America. We have well, let me finish. We have criticised individuals on the left as well, including one of the recipients of one of these parcel bombs or packages, Robert De Niro, who I think was silly at the Tony Awards. That was just immature silliness, and it got us nowhere. Yeah, it was silly.
One thing that's become very clear over the last couple of years, maybe a little bit longer, I don't know, but whereas there used to be media, now it's either right-wing media or left-wing media. There doesn't seem to be any middle media or just plain media. It doesn't seem to be objective anymore. It's either one way or the other.
But it depends who you're talking to. It depends who you're talking to, Steve, because president after president has complained at some point about the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Boston Globe, and CNN and Fox News. You know, you only have to look at the situation in this country and how the government of the day always takes a stick largely to the BBC because it's the state-funded broadcaster, and it's shades of that.
Well, to put it into context, I'm not a particular fan of Tommy Robinson, but he was dragged off to court and summarily sentenced to a huge prison sentence.
He broke the law.
He wasn't the only one who'd broken the law. And had anyone reported on the speech he made outside, which forced the Attorney General to have a look at this, had anyone reported that speech other than him on his own website, then it was pretty clear why the Attorney General wants to look at it, or why the judges wanted him to look at, because there's been many cases where that particular law has been broken, in a lot worse case, and has actually affected trials in a very bad way, and they've not even been arrested.
Well, I think, all right.
Well, the actual newspapers have been fined.
Okay, you've had your say. I'm going to leave it there with you, if I may, Steve. But just to point out, the decision to refer it to the Attorney General was made by the judge in the court before any speech by Mr. Yaxley, whatever he wants to call himself on any given day. David has called from Finchley to talk about the events in the United States. If you're just joining us here at LBC, the list of critics of Donald Trump who've been on the receiving end of suspect packages, pipe bombs and the like is growing. Former Vice President Joe Biden and Robert De Niro, the actor, are the latest recipients. David, what are you reading into all of this?
Hi, just first and foremost, I want to say that violence on both sides of the political aisle should always be condemned, and we should never encourage such behaviour. That being said, I find it quite hypocritical that the left has been guilty of violence over the past few years on anyone on the right, those who are never-Trumpers and those who are pro-Trumpers. You had the events in UC Berkeley, the acts of Antifa, which have been going on for a long time, and the media has very conveniently turned a blind eye to all their actions because it fits their political narrative, because it's sort of shutting down the voices on the right. So let's not pretend that the left isn't guilty of this type of behavior. That's the first point I want to show.
Who is pretending? Who is pretending that that's not?
Well, there never seems to be such shock and horror when Antifa is guilty of all this type of behavior. Whereas when this incident happens by somebody, we don't even know who did this yet. There's no evidence as to who was the perpetrator behind these events. We automatically scream at the right and Trump and everybody on the right is not evil people. Whereas I just don't find the balance in the condemnation. That's the first point I want to make. And second of all, although Trump has certainly said offensive things in the past, he has never actually called for violence. Yeah, you have.
Hang on, David. Did you not hear the audio at the top of the hour? He very much has. In sort of sometimes moment to moment said, yeah, give him a kicking, yeah, the good old days we'd have been able to do worse. He has said. Yeah. He has recently praised somebody for punching a journalist, David.
Yes, that body slam. Okay, fine, now we should condemn
on a number of occasions. So don't say he has never, because he has frequently called for violence against individuals.
Comparing that statement to what Maxine Waters has been saying, that you should find a Republican and kick them and harass them in gas stations, in restaurants, and what's been going on with Mitch McConnell and Ted Cruz and all these politicians on the right who have been vehemently attacked by left-wing mobs. That seems to be nothing to write home about.
Which example are you talking about? Left-wing mobs? What do you mean?
Well, what do you mean? The people who come to the restaurant and harass Republicans and harass the right-wingers.
Oh, you mean gosh, who was the woman? She was having dinner with her husband, wasn't she? And some people came and forced her out of the restaurant. Oh, it was Sarah Sanders, wasn't it? It was Sarah Sanders.
Yeah. It was her, Ted Cruz, Mitch McConnell just this week. So no one seems to be talking about that much.
But we did. We did. And it's also silly.
Yes, that's very good. And what I'm trying to say is, and following on from your previous caller, it could very well be that this is, I mean, it's not always great to come up with conspiracy theories, but this could be a very good political ploy for the left to sort of send all these pipe bombs to all those who have attacked Donald Trump in an attempt to
okay, and when you say, all right, I'm really loath to reduce this to left and right, but I'm going with your conversation. When you say it's entirely possible that this has been done by the left, who do you mean? Give me dig down into your theory for me a little bit, rather than use loose language like the left.
Well, okay, so George Soros has been a major funder for Black Lives Matter, for Antifa, for just paying people to go to Donald Trump events and disrupt them. And you can go on YouTube and you can see the people that have been disrupting events, and they say, yeah, we've been paid to be here. So it could very well be that this is another case of such a paid left-winger who's trying to make the Republicans look bad just before the midterm, so that. So
are you suggesting that are you suggesting George Soros may have arranged to have this sent to him and the others to disrupt Donald Trump's chances of doing well in November? No, but are you suggesting that
George Soros did what?
Arrange this, paid for this?
No, not necessarily George Soros, but George Soros has done these types of things in the past, so it could be.
You realise he's a victim of one of these, as things stand. He's a victim of one of these attacks.
Yeah, okay, fine. That fits in.
It's not fine, is it? Really?
Sorry.
It's not fine, is it?
No, it's not fine, but it fits into the general, to the larger political message that they want to get, and political power grab that they want to achieve.
So somebody, again, we don't know the full facts, police investigation, and all of that.
That's right.
Yeah, but I'm the one saying that, and you're not. What you're saying,
I did say
even though we don't know all the facts, you have said. You've said the name of one of the victims of this time and time again, while suggesting that the left are actually doing this to themselves to do damage to Donald Trump. That's what I'm hearing from you, David.
We don't know who did it. We don't know who did it. That's why I said
we don't know who did it, but George Soros.
That's only just now. I've just mentioned that George
several
Soros
times
has done this in the past.
Has done what in the past? Sent bombs to himself and other people.
No, not to himself, obviously, but he's paid people to disrupt and be violent at Donald Trump rallies.
To be violent?
He has done that before.
And your evidence that he's paid for people to be violent is what?
Well, you go on YouTube and you see the people who have...
Well, YouTube isn't a good enough source, really, is it? Where's your evidence, hard evidence, that George Soros has paid people to be violent at Donald Trump rallies? Where's your evidence for that, David?
He's a funder of Antifa.
He's a funder of liberal and left-wing organisations, yes.
Well, Antifa is a terrorist organisation. It's not labelled for what it is. This is the thing. It's a terrorist organisation because it's using violence for a political means.
So George Soros, again, we're back to him. He funds terrorism now.
Well, it is. It's using violence for a political means. That's considered definition of terrorism.
So you're we both say we don't know because we don't know who did this, but your tendency is to think that George Soros or someone like him loathes Donald Trump enough to plan this themselves.
I'm entertaining the possibility. That's what I'm saying. That this whole conversation is based on the assumption that someone who is a Donald Trump supporter did all these things. I'm just saying that could be the case. If it is, we should condemn it and say it's wrong. But you have to look at it on another perspective and see that the track record of violence has been perpetrated much more by the left than on the right. So if you just look at the list of violence that's been going on in America and who's perpetrating it, so this would just fit the bill that this is another case of violence being used for police.
Well, I don't think you have evidence for that last statement you've just made, David, any more than I have direct evidence at my fingertips right now to counter it. So let's just say that that's your theory. David in Finchley, thank you very much indeed.
Michael is in Chelmsford. Michael, what would you like to say?
You made a brilliant analogy the other day.
Yeah, go on. First time for everything.
I think comparing us coming out of the EU, how it would affect us using a boot fare.
idea scenario that we'd lose £20 or we'd save £20, but we'd lose 180.
Yes. You can respond to that and say, yeah, but I'm not going to go to the boot fair. I'm going to sell all my stuff on eBay to customers that I don't know exist yet, but they'll pay loads more.
Well, that's the idea. Why not present the other side to the argument?
I just did.
It would give us the opportunity to go to more boot fairs, even if they are more expensive. And we're stuck with one trading partner, really, at the moment.
We've got 70 trade agreements with pretty much every developed economy, or not every developed economy in the world, but loads. I mean, the European Union has more FTAs, I think, than any other bloc on the planet, mate, and we're part of it.
So why are we likely to get better deals with America if we come out?
We're not going to get better deals with America for us. We're going to get a great deal for America because they'll be able to sell us stuff that are... I'll tell you what, let's ask a scientist. Professor Brian Cox is here. Why aren't we going to be able to get a better trade? Why is a deal with America not going to be better for us than it is with current arrangements?
Because the EU is a terrifically large market and we're a smaller market.
Is that good enough for you, Michael?
No, not really.
He's a professor, man.
In this country.
Yeah, but there's 60 million of us and there's 500 million. So if you were in business, who would you want to do a deal with? The 500 million customers or the 60 million customers?
I'd want to deal with both.
Yeah, okay.
And have more customers.
All right, Michael, I love you like a brother, but I don't know how long I've got the professor in the studio for.
That we want a bespoke arrangement on goods which recognises the peculiar, frankly, geographic economic entity that is the United Kingdom. We are, and I hadn't quite understood the full extent of this, but if you look at the UK and you look at how we trade in goods, we're particularly reliant on the Dover-Calais crossing. And that's one of the reasons why, and there's been a lot of controversy about this, but one of the reasons why we've wanted to make sure that we have a specific and very proximate relationship with the EU to ensure frictionless trade at the border, particularly for just-in-time manufacturing goods, whether it's pharmaceutical goods or perishable goods like food. I don't think it's a question so much of the risk of major shortages, but I think probably the average consumer might not be aware of the full extent to which the choice of goods that we have in the stores are dependent on one or two very specific trade routes.
Leroy has called from Chiswick on the question of the scale of and the influence of the far right and neo-Nazis in the UK. You speak for yourself, Leroy. You've been on EDL marches. In what capacity?
Well, I just went along to see what it was about originally a few years ago, and I couldn't have met any nicer people, to be totally honest. A wide range of people there, and it just baffles me why you still call them far right or use it far right in the same sentence as the EDL. It's great. They've got a Sikh division, a Jewish division. If they are far right, they're the worst far right people going ever, surely.
What was going on at the rally that you went to, or the march that you went to?
Well, the people just talking.
What were they protesting about? What were they chanting about?
About Muslims at the time this is when I first started going. It was when the 7/7 and all of that happened, and the Manchester Arena and all that. So people were obviously angry.
Well, hang on. There was a big scale of time between the 7/7 bombings and the Manchester Arena, wasn't there?
The 7/7 bombings. That's when I first when they originally started up the EDL. That's when I originally got interested to see what it was all about.
And what were the chants? What were they saying about Muslims in particular?
Nothing too bad. You would hear some unsavoury comments and such, but...
So not everyone was a nice person?
No, you're going to get that everywhere in life. You're going to get bad apples in every... Like the Labour Party at the moment, you've got all that going on. It's every single... Whatever, you're going to have bad apples.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get a sense. I'm genuinely keen to know more. I mean, the whole point of this hour was to understand the nature of groups like this. So, what you still haven't been able to say to me in words what the march was about, because of course I was as appalled as you by the 7/7 attacks.
Well, yeah, but what
were you doing there? What was the purpose?
Well, because people are worried, like myself. You're worried. You're seeing people get blown up and stuff, bombs going off, and you're being told there's 23,000 of them jihadis over it. That's pretty worrying. And you turn on the telly and all you hear
sorry, Leroy. No, I just want to be clear about timescales here. That 23,000 figure has only very recently been presented, hasn't it? So I want you to take me back to that time and that day and that march and what was being said.
Well, at the time, like in Luton, what Tommy Robinson pointed out when when they were burning the poppies and stuff like that. That's quite worrying. And then you turn on the telly and you get whoever was in charge. Oh, don't worry.
Who was burning the
about
poppies?
Let's move on. Don't worry. We don't. Us people. We don't see any action.
Who was burning the poppies?
The Muslims were.
When was that?
Years ago. Go and watch Tommy Robinson's speech at Oxford University and you'll know all about it.
Were you concerned at all back in 2011 when the Anders Breivik attack happened? And I don't know whether you remember, the EDL's reputation was pretty badly damaged after supporters of Breivik and Breivik's actions were arrested plotting to bomb mosques, and there were links revealed between the EDL and Anders Breivik. Does that concern you at all?
Well, it did, obviously, of course, and it concerned Tommy Robinson, and that's why he made videos and publicly outed all of them people that were wrong and far right in the group. He publicly outed them.
But can I ask you what, aside from concern over Islamist terror, which you and I clearly will share, that concern over Islamist terror, what else is the EDL for other than that? Because on that basis, I could be a member of the EDL. So,
I think
what else is it?
Just stems from there's people here that are here to harm us, and not single person. There's 23,000 jihadis here right now that want to kill us, ain't they? They're being watched, are they not? So they obviously want to harm us. So what politician or anything like that has come out and said, "Don't worry, we've got this sorted. We're going to try and..." No one.
No, but they haven't. But
we hear, "Let's move on and light a candle." That's not very reassuring, is it? People get to the street and want to know.
Okay. Have you, for example, gone on a march expressing the same concern about the kind of people I mentioned at the very top of the hour, people who were recruiting, and we're not suggesting the EDL is doing this, but people who were recruiting to neo-Nazi groups and wanted to create, let me finish my description, wanted to create white-only villages in South Wales and espousing murder and calling their children Adolf, and joining what are banned. I mean, the EDL isn't banned, but joining banned organisations. Would you take to the streets concerned that they might harm you or other people in this country?
Not at all, because it's such a small. 3 people. It was a really small group, wasn't it?
No. Those are the 3 people who've been convicted. I'm talking about the people who hold those views.
No, I know, but if you put it in if you.
But you won't be marching about that anytime soon. It's just about the Muslims, is it?
Well, and when they start blowing people up, I assure you, them same people that take to the streets will be out on the street. When they start blowing people up and start raping little girls and that, we'll be on the streets, I assure you.
Okay, well, Leroy, hang on a sec. On the basis of raping little girls, on that basis, Leroy, I'm just trying to be clear with you. On that basis of raping little girls, without a doubt, the vast majority of child sexual abuse happening in this country right now is happening in people's homes, and because of the nature of our population, it's largely white men doing it.
Well, cool.
Are you out on the streets about that, Leroy? Get out on the streets about that.
We're a more white populated country.
Yeah, I know. I just explained that.
More sense then.
Well, I explained that. I'm asking you why you're not on the streets about that. Why aren't you on the streets about that?
Because it's not a massive problem, is it? We're in a largely white country.
So hang on. It's not a massive problem that tens of thousands of children are abused in their own. No, well, it's very sensible. I'm asking. You're telling me who you are based on what you will fight for and what you won't fight for, and it has some.
Not saying that.
Yes, you are.
No, I'm not. You're putting words in my mouth. Of course, that's a problem.
I'm not
But
making a judgment about you. That's very different.
I can't think of the word because it's unbelievable that you can't understand it. I'm pretty dim in that, and I can fully understand. We're in our country is mostly filled with white people.
I made that point myself, Leroy, in what I said. I made that point myself.
The majority of
I'm not playing numbers. I'm not playing numbers. I'm asking why you will take to the streets about Muslim men abusing children, but you won't take to the streets about the many thousands of white men abusing children in their own homes and communities.
We didn't just take to the streets because of that. That was one of the many reasons. That was one of the many reasons.
Even though, at that point, none of these at the point you describe you joined this EDL march, none of the grooming gangs had been revealed at that point.
EDL started off very small, didn't it? It was very small. It started very small when there was just the 7/7 bombing. Then when it got the move on forward, you get the Manchester attack. It got even bigger. Then we find out little girls are being groomed. Now it's humongous. Look how many people are outside the court for Tommy the other week. It's getting bigger and bigger because no one's doing nothing. Not one politician is coming out and giving us hope and, okay, they're sorting it. That's not happening. So people are worried and taking to the streets. And people like you are just, I don't see how you're not getting it.
And equally, Leroy, I don't see how you're not getting my simple question. Why aren't you as fired up by the massive scale of domestic abuse in this country, by the massive scale of child abuse in this country that has nothing to do with Muslims?
But Muslims are a tiny population in our country. They're like 0.5. They're 5%.
I get that. I said that before you, Leroy. Oh my God! I said, Leroy. I said that.
Understand that, Sheila? Why are you asking that question? I'm really dim and I can understand.
I'm not asking you.
You're a really smart lady. No, and you don't get it.
And I'm not asking you about numbers. I'm not asking you about numbers. I am asking you. I'm asking you why this particular group exercise you to the point where you will go marching and other things don't of a similar nature.
No one, in my lifetime, I've never heard of anyone blow anyone up in England in my lifetime.
Well, you missed the whole IRA thing, Leroy. Hate to break it to you. Thanks very much indeed for your call.
What is more shocking than the fact that she is the world's worst negotiator is the fact that she has left this country underprepared for a no-deal situation. She's had 2 years to prepare a no-deal situation, and she hasn't because of her intransigence, because of her stubbornness, because she always thought she was going to get the deal she wanted. Now we're days away from maybe crashing out of the EU, and we still don't have anything in place. Now, I'm not too worried about us crashing out because I think, that we might have hard times for a few months, but I don't think it's going to be as disastrous as all the Remainers would have us believe. But the deal that I suspect she will put forward will not satisfy Leavers or Remainers. She has let all of us down.
But it's a divided Britain, isn't it? It's not really surprising that some people are going to feel let down.
It's a 52-48 split being enacted by our government trying to appeal to no people. And as you say, may well appeal to no one. This boils down to me to the point that Brexit, as campaigned for, was a lie. It was untrue. It was
How could it be a lie? We didn't know what it was going to mean when we voted to leave or stay.
That's exactly my point.
But it's not your point because nobody... How could we possibly have known what it meant? You didn't know what it meant when you voted, and neither did I when I voted. You couldn't possibly
hang on a second. So we are now conceding the point...
No, I'm not conceding anything.
You just conceded that you didn't know what...
The question I was asked was, did I want to stay or leave? I wasn't asked, was it going to be difficult? But I was asked whether I wanted to stay or leave. And you didn't know what it was going to be like either, so don't pretend you did.
And categorically, that is the problem, isn't it? It was not planned out. It was not tested.
How could it be planned?
Because you could suggest what it might entail. It might entail a situation with the border in Northern Ireland.
It was a lie. People like people. There was no lie. There was a question.
David Davis saying the first thing that will happen, a deal will be done in Berlin, even though that was possible. Liam Fox saying it will be the easiest trade deal in the history. All of this stuff was rubbish.
And David Cameron and George Osborne telling us.
Douglas in Chertsey. Hello.
Oh, hello. I have to be quick because I'm just about to put the ram in with the U's for this season.
Oh.
But what I would like to say is that we had the people's vote. We voted to leave. They've agreed that we're going to leave. So were we going to have vote 2, whatever you want to call it? It should be, do we want to leave on WTO rules or do we want to leave on Theresa May's rules? No other option, just those two. And we go with the consequences.
That should be if there is a second vote, that should be it.
If there's going to be one, that's all that there should be.
Well, I'm afraid that's unlikely. If there is a people's vote, that's unlikely, Douglas, because... Are you okay? Are you busy? Do you need to go?
Yeah, no, we're okay.
Yeah.
We haven't
I think
put the ram in, but it's still in the back of the trailer. The user waiting.
I think that's unlikely.
That's a first for you, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. Although it's nothing compared to some things. I was doing a live OB at Madonna's wedding, and a naked man walked up to me. So, Douglas, this is a walk in the park in comparison.
Oh, we try to keep our clothes on while we're doing this. So anyway, there's going to be another vote. The vote should only be that, nothing else.
So, Theresa May's deal or no deal?
Yeah.
Well,
Theresa May's deal or WTO rules and no deal, and that's it.
Well,
other choices, because she said, the others have said, we accept the vote, we go with it. The people want to leave, so we are going to leave. It's just on which terms, WTO or Theresa's deal. No halfway house.
All right, but what if people are given extra information that they didn't have last time around, and they assess that information, and there is an honest-to-goodness campaign, and hopefully a better one if it happens, than there was last time around, and they take a different view, that they do want a third choice?
But then you're going to confuse them. You give them too many views, and I do hate these.
Oh, Douglas, you've been hanging around sheep too often. We're not sheep, we're people.
We're going to open the door, and it could be nice and sunny, or it could be rainy, like when we get up in the morning. And what we do, we deal with it.
I think you're just impatient, Douglas, and this is too important to be impatient.
No, not at all. I've thought for many years we should not be involved in it. We needed to get out, and this is our only option to be able to get out and not stay back in.
All right. Get on with the sheep and the ewes. Good luck with it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Douglas. Douglas in Chertsey. Rob in Rochester. Hello.
Hello, Shelagh. I completely agree with Douglas, 100%, exactly the same. There shouldn't be another vote at all. And it's democracy. We made the vote. We're out. I don't care about the rules. The reason that we're in this state is because Theresa May was a Remainer. God knows why they put her in that position. It should have been somebody who was a Brexiteer negotiating hard on our behalf. I mean, we're the 26th strongest economy, stronger than 26 of the countries in the EU.
Rob,
right?
You've forgotten that mad Conservative leadership campaign, if you can call it a campaign, after Brexit. The Brexiteers ran for the hills, divided to conquer, and ended up conquering nobody but themselves. And, Theresa May was the only viable candidate at the time, wasn't she?
It was I didn't say who should have done it. It should have been somebody who was more of a Brexiteer. My feelings are that had it been, for instance, obviously somebody like Maggie Thatcher, I didn't particularly like, but she was strong enough to say this is the way of how we're going to.
But she also had stonking parliamentary majorities, something Theresa May managed to throw away.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying what we should have done is somebody should have negotiated hard on our behalf and said, look, this is what we want. This is our deal. This is what we want.
Who might that have
Take
been?
it or leave it.
If you could choose, who would that be?
Well, it would probably be Jason Reed-Mogg. Obviously, at the end of the day, it'd be Mogg because he's a Brexiteer. But as I say, at the end of the day, all I'm saying is whatever happens now, it's a very important day today. Whatever happens,
it is
incredibly important. I voted I voted the first time round because I'm in my 60s and I voted not to go in. My father and I voted not to go in. We went in, and I've seen our country over the last 50 years dissolving, our sovereignty disappearing, rules being made by another country. It has nothing to do with us. We saved all these people. We saved them all. In the Second World War, we helped them all, and now they turn their back on us. And we know why, obviously, because if we leave...
They're not turning their back on us. We've turned our back on them, Rob.
No, we're turning back on them because of the way they've treated us over the years. They treat us so badly.
But you've just drunk the Daily Mail Kool-Aid on the way they've treated us over the years, haven't you? You just swallowed it hook, line and sinker.
No, I've been part of it. Remember, I've been there from the beginning when I could be proud to be English. And now I can't even mention the word English.
Yes, you can. I'm glad you're proud to be English.
I am.
I'm glad.
Listen, when you look at a passport application, it doesn't say English. Or even you can have an SNP, Scottish National Party, but if you had an English National Party, you would be considered to be racist. I'm sorry. No, you can't be proud to be English. That's the way it is.
You can be proud to be English. Go for it. Do it. As long as it doesn't involve denigrating people who aren't English. That's the only rule, isn't it? Around being proud to be anything. Rob, thank you. Rob in Rochester.
Adam is next. Isle of Sheppey in Kent. Good evening to you, Adam.
Good evening. I just want to take issue to the last contributors, the callers. I'm a Leave voter, and I get the feeling still from these guys that they accuse us that we didn't know what we voted for. When I understood the question that was on the ballot paper, it didn't say leave the own union in brackets if we get a deal, it should leave the European Union. I was fully aware when I put my tick in that box.
So you'd be happy with no deal, Adam, would you?
Yes, I do not want to be bullied by this organisation, and that is what we're doing. We are bowing down on our knees with our cap in our hand and begging for mercy, and it's completely and utterly bizarre that a country such as this one would do that. I don't think no deal's a bad thing. I think there's good and upsides in both sides of the argument. But what they're trying to do is make it out as though it's the most calamitous thing possible, and that people didn't understand that. And like your previous caller said, we know what the information is now. Rubbish. In fact, the last caller said about polls. Well, there was a recent poll that polled Leave voters, and it found out, Leave and Remain voters, that Leave voters were more likely to understand what they were voting for than what Remain did.
Adam, would you like the Prime Minister... What would you want the Prime Minister to say in a few minutes' time?
I want her to come out and say she hasn't got the support of the cabinet, and therefore she's going to have to pursue a no deal if the European Union won't desist on this absolutely crazy line and the treatment of our country, which they seem to be pursuing. That's what I want her to do.
Adam, thank you very much.
It's 12:42. Lee is in Brentwood. Lee, what would you like to say?
I voted Brexit, perhaps idealistically. If idealistically I was asked to vote again tomorrow, I would continue to vote Brexit.
Yes.
Despite all of the bias, I would say, that I've heard on the programme today, I liken it to taking a job whilst employed on a lower wage in the hope and expectation that I will earn more in the future. You're buying into an optimism that you've got the ability to change your own future. The problem we've got is that we joined a common market in the 70s. Year by year, decade by decade, the powers of Europe increased over this country more and more and more, to the extent that there was almost political union, monetary union. Even now we're looking at sort of military union as well. That's not what most people in this country, I believe, want to see. Now, what you're doing is dressing it up in a black and white scenario, no deal or a deal. The reality is quite simple. The deal that's been presented has been negotiated by Euro Remainers in the civil service, backed by a Prime Minister who, to all intents and purposes, we're led to believe has been a Remainer and stuff.
Let me pause you there, because you obviously, I'm familiar with everything you've just said. Why do you think, if there was something better for Britain available, why do you think the Prime Minister wouldn't want it?
Well, you see, when you go into a negotiating strategy, the other side have to believe that you're prepared to go to the extreme to get what you want.
Well, they did. That's why no deal has been on the table. But the question wasn't that, mate. The question very simply is, if there's something better available, why do you think the Prime Minister actively doesn't want it?
Why do I think the Prime Minister actively doesn't want it? I think that the Prime Minister is trying to bring together a lot of different people that's going to be impossible to do.
Yes, I do. No, I think that as well. But we're looking at your suggestion that because they were somehow Remainers and the negotiations have been conducted by people who didn't want to leave, then that's why it's all gone badly, which I understand you have to cling to that belief, because the alternative
Well, it's not a case of clinging. It's
all right, you just have to hold on. You have to hold on to that belief. But the question that I really want you to... Lee, you can talk as much as you want, but I'm just going to ask you the question again until you answer it.
James, touché. The point is
so
that
why, if there is something better available, in your mind, just you as an individual voter, in your mind, why would the Prime Minister actively not want this thing that exists that's better than what she's got?
Well, arguably, that's the million-dollar question, and that's why most of the party's now turning against her.
Yeah, so what's your answer to it, then?
I can't answer that, can I?
But you told me it was true. You told me that she categorically didn't want this thing that was better than what she's got.
I didn't say categorically, James. I think you should listen to what I actually said. What I said was that she was, in the eyes of what we've been led to believe, she was always a Remainer.
Yes.
That's
now,
what we were led
here's
to
my
believe
question.
In the press, right?
So, in your mind, you must have an answer to this, otherwise you wouldn't have rung in. Why do you think she doesn't want that thing that's better than what she's got?
Well, let me correct you there. The reason I rung in is in the interest of balance, because ultimately the accusations that you fly around left, right and centre about everybody that voted Brexit as gammon is patently untrue.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not in the position...
I mean, the definition of gammon is someone who won't change their mind, however much their evidence is. Lee, I'm going to keep asking you the question until either you say you can't answer it or you answer it. So there is something better than what she's got, but she's decided that she doesn't want it. Why do you think she's done that, mate?
James, am I party to all of the negotiations that take place? Do I know all of the facts? No, I run a business myself.
Yes, that's why I said think. That's why I said think, not no, just think. Why do you think?
Please don't be patronising, James.
Why do you think she's done it?
You're an intelligent man, but you don't need to behave that way.
Oh, here we go. So you're not going to answer the question because you can't, and now you're just going to embarrass yourself by fluttering on the radio.
I'm not fluttering at all.
No.
Actually, not at all.
No, it's all going brilliantly. So now we'll answer the question.
It's like a playground now, isn't it? You're just talking over me constantly.
Why has she chosen not to do this thing that's better? Just any explanation that bears...
What she has tried to do is cobble together an agreement to try to bridge massive divides across the whole political spectrum. And it was never going to work because
I agree with
ultimately her position is from... We remain as much in the status quo as we possibly can because of the 40 years encroachment the EU has made on this country.
Yeah, no, you can't just repeat yourself because here's the thing.
But it's a fact, though, isn't it?
Lee, it's
a fact.
No, well, okay, it's a fact. So suddenly you know stuff.
No,
I'm just asking you to explain your own reasoning.
For an intelligent person,
we're doing it again.
People the way that you
I'm not insulting you. You've insulted me.
No, I haven't at all.
No, have you called me patronising? I'm telling teacher. So let's try again, okay? Last chance. Here is the thing that's much better than what she's got. She's decided not to go down that road. Can you just tell me why you think she's made that decision? That's
I would rather be going down the no deal, be prepared to walk away, not pay them the, whatever it is, 40 billion that we have, than put together a deal that is clearly not in our public interest. Now, why would she do that? I don't know.
Right, okay.
That's the honest answer. I don't know.
I do.
Go on, then.
That thing that you think is better than what she's done, it doesn't exist, Lee. It's 12:48.
Next, it's Malcolm in Hounslow. What do you want to hear from the Prime Minister in a moment or two?
I want to hear that we're ready for a no-deal exit and that she's got a good plan for doing it.
And what else?
No, that's it, because all this wrangling with Europe should be telling everybody that this is not an organisation to be associated with. If extrication from this club is so difficult, that alone should tell everybody we've got to get out of it.
Because it doesn't want us to leave?
We should just want to leave. All of us leavers just want out. We don't even want to do a deal with the European Union. Let's worry about the deal after we're out.
And then worry about the consequences?
Yes, this always was a great country. What consequences? When I hear people talking about they're worried about what's going to happen, where are they coming from? This country has been the best country in Europe for 1,000 years.
Well, for example, the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, is reported to have told the Cabinet yesterday he couldn't guarantee that people wouldn't die as a result of a no-deal arrangement.
Yeah, but what an absurd... what
does he know?
It?
Malcolm, thank you.
And what they're basically doing is radically increasing the risks of us crashing out with no plan and no deal, and that will be catastrophic for our economy, and it will create huge divisions within British society. One of the advantages of this deal, to be honest, and the reason why 80% of the British public support this deal, is because what it does...
80% of the British public support this deal? The draft deal? How on earth do we know that yet?
Okay, let me back on that. My sense is... Sorry, let me get the language right on that. My sense is that if we have an opportunity to explain this, the vast majority of the British public would support this
Where
deal.
did 80% come from? I'm a bit confused.
Sorry, I'm producing a number to try to illustrate what I believe.
I know he's a moron.